Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the quiet alleyways of medieval Kyoto not for a sword fight or a scandal, but to follow one of the most peculiar civil servants you've probably never heard of, a smell inspector. That's right, your job, to literally sniff out social disorder, unsanctioned perfumes, suspicious fish guts, and bathhouse etiquette violations, all using nothing but your trained nose and a fan infused with clove oil. Picture it. It's barely dawn. The city is still cloaked in mist rooftops, silvered with dew, and a thin curl of smoke rises from distant breakfast fires. Somewhere a rooster half-heartedly tries to wake the neighborhood, but Kyoto isn't a city that rushes. It stretches, exhales. And so do you, because your work begins before most people's eyes are even open. You are officially a Kosatsuwa scent officer, in charge of upholding olfactory order in the capital. And yes, there are rules. Lots of them. You'd think working with smells would be a pleasant gig until you meet your first fermented soy merchant with no understanding of spatial courtesy. Or a noble who's decided the best way to mark his status is to douse himself in 5 layers of rare imported incense and leave a trail of sandalwood strong enough to violate 3 different ordinances. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere unexpected, let me know where you are and what time it is in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories drift. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start the day with ritual. Simple one, placing your inspection. Fan gently on a folded silk cloth, then opening your cedarwood box of oils and sachets. You're not just dressing yourself, you're calibrating. You light a thread of plum incense, just enough to clear your nostrils from last night's lingering fish stew. Even your breakfast is mild gruel and pickled radish, so no garlic fog clouds your judgment later. Your job demands olfactory purity. This is not a drill. Outside, the cobbled streets glisten faintly from last night's rain. Kyoto in the 14th century is a city of layers: clay, paper, pine, smoke, skin. It's alive in scent in ways that modern cities have mostly forgotten. And you? You're one of the very few allowed to notice. Your first encounter is with a charcoal vendor unloading bundles of blackened wood beside a tea house. You nod, he bows, you smell. All is well. The wood is seasoned, the bundles dry, no mold, no rot. A lesser man might not care. But moisture brings mildew. Mildew brings insects. And insects, well, insects bring scrolls full of angry citizen complaints. There's a quiet pride in being unnoticed when you're doing your job right. You're not a warrior or a merchant. No one claps when you walk by. But every alley that smells vaguely pleasant? Every stall that doesn't knock you sideways with questionable fermentation? That's you. Or someone like you, a nose in the service of public peace. Your official robes are simple, deep brown, tied with a faded sash that carries the scent of hinoki wood and old ink. On your belt hangs a tiny ceramic jar containing crushed chrysanthemum petals. Not for decoration, it's your reset button. In a job like this, sometimes you need to clear the board and start again, especially after an unfortunate encounter with spoiled tofu. Historians still argue whether smell inspectors like you held formal rank equal to low-level magistrates, or whether you were more like glorified city watchmen with delicate sensibilities. What's clear is that you had teeth, metaphorical ones at least. You could issue fines. You could file scent violations that led to actual court appearances. One unlucky merchant once spent 3 days in a holding pen because he tried to pass off imported Persian musk as local floral extract. His stall never smelled the same again. You pass a bakery as the sun finally lifts above the tiled rooftops. The scent, yeasty, warm, with just a touch of roasted sesame, makes you pause. Not because something's wrong, but because something's perfect. You savor it, a brief indulgence. Then the smell shifts. Someone's burning seaweed. You frown. Down the next alley, you find the source. A young girl, no older than 12, sits beside a tiny charcoal burner, drying sheets of nori on a bamboo frame. The process is legal, but the wind's changed, and now it wafts directly into the face of the neighboring apothecary. You scribble a polite warning on a rice paper slip and leave it by her station. It's not a fine. Yet, you believe in warnings. Later today, you'll see worse. You always do. A noble who insists on burning eaglewood incense reserved for imperial ceremonies. A butcher who disposes of trimmings in the canal. And somewhere, if you're unlucky, a traveling monk whose asceticism includes never washing. Ever. Spiritual aroma, they call it. You call it cause for intervention. But for now, the city is still quiet, still stretching. And you're not just walking through it. You're reading it. With your nose. The kit you carry is small, but meticulously arranged. Tools not for violence or bureaucracy, but for subtlety, for inference. Each item has been chosen, seasoned, and prepared over years. You carry it the way a monk might carry a sacred bell, with reverence and a dash of overcautious paranoia. At the center of it all is your inspection fan. Made of lacquered bamboo and covered in silk, dyed a deep indigo, it's infused with clove oil, camellia extract, and just a hint of sandalwood, enough to mask mild unpleasantness, but not so much as to interfere with your judgment. It's not for fanning yourself, though you're tempted in Kyoto's humid months. No, it's for wafting air samples toward your nose, for filtering pungent breezes into manageable streams. You've even used it once to block the breath of a very drunk tax scribe who had clearly confused sake with mouthwash. Beside it in the pouch lies your ash cone, made of compressed rice husks and white ash. You burn it slowly, watching how the smoke curls in a suspect room. Drafts, mold, and hidden rot will change the trail. You've caught more than one dishonest innkeeper trying to mask spoiled tatami with too much citrus peel. There's the chukui, sachet scroll, an unassuming paper roll containing thin slivers of scented parchment. Each one bears a controlled scent: plum blossom, pine resin, rain-soaked straw, roasted barley. You use them like reference points. If a building's odor sits too far outside this accepted spectrum, it raises a question. Not always an accusation, but a curiosity. Why does this home, for instance, smell faintly of pickled boar when it claims no meat has entered in months? A lesser-known item is your bamboo spoon. No larger than your thumb, used to scoop tiny bits of matter for scent preservation. A blob of odd-smelling oil found outside a noble's gate? Into the spoon, into a clay vial, sealed for later analysis. You once had to carry a droplet of fox urine 6 blocks to prove that a rumored haunting was, in fact, just a stray kitsune with a territorial streak. And then, the most overlooked item of all, your nose cloth. It's not elegant, just soft woven cotton soaked overnight in mint and birch sap. On especially overwhelming days, public toilets, livestock docks, the occasional street theater, you press it discreetly to your face. You wouldn't be the first inspector to faint on duty, but you'll be cursed in the scrolls if you're remembered for it. Historians still debate whether all these tools were truly standardized or if regional officials had leeway in assembling their kits. Some scrolls describe rosewood fans and silver vials in high courts, while others speak of scent inspectors carrying bundles of dried moss and vinegar-soaked rags. The truth, likely, is that the office evolved, part tradition, part improvisation. You remember your mentor, old Sadao, whose fan smelled of burnt tea leaves and faded glory. He taught you that the nose isn't just a detector, it's a storyteller. Smell isn't proof, he'd say, but it's a very persuasive suspicion. He once spent 4 days tracing a particular cinnamon sesame hybrid smell back to a secret gambling den disguised as a soba shop. You still don't know how he did it. He just sniffed once and said, "Something's hiding behind the starch." There's also a wax tablet in your pouch, tucked behind the sachets. On it, you record your findings in quick glyphs before transferring them to the official scroll at day's end. The wax is streaked with decades of imprints, some so deep you swear the smell itself must still live inside them. Every inspector writes a little differently. You draw tiny nose symbols next to your ratings. A wide, flaring nostril means offensive, urgent. A thin line with a curl means pleasant, permitted, but watched. Today, your first wax note is simple. Kyo Bakery, sesame balanced, no sour drift, cleared. You press your fan gently to the page to dry it. A breeze lifts a scent of cherry bark from someone's laundry line nearby. A small, silly item in your pouch is the bot plum pit rattle. It's barely louder than a whisper, but the sound reminds people who you are. You rattle it twice before entering a merchant courtyard. Not a threat, just a presence. You've found that people behave better when they know the nose is watching. Or rather, smelling. You arrive at a silk dyer's house just as his workers open the steaming cauldrons. The air hits you like a wall. Pungent lye, damp bark, and a sharp vinegar tang. You fan once, twice. You hold your sachet scroll beside the doorframe. The smell is aggressive, but within bounds. You nod. The workers bow. The dyer offers you tea, which you politely refuse. You've learned not to drink from anyone whose building smells stronger than their hospitality. There's an art to knowing when to let something pass. Not all violations are worth the ink. You're not just enforcing scent law, you're keeping the peace, and peace sometimes smells a little funky, especially around lunchtime. Your final tool isn't in your pouch, it's in your face, your nose. It's been trained over years to separate layers, to find the one odd note in a crowded room. You've studied court incense games, temple purification rites, and back alley stinks so dense they could stun a crane. It's said that a true kosatsu can smell rain before it falls. You're not quite there, but you once caught the faintest note of sweet bean paste inside a home that claimed to be on a fasting holiday. The resulting scandal? Legendary. You step back out into the street, pack adjusted, fan folded. The sun is higher now, and the day's real smells are beginning to bloom. Fried rice, soap, sweat, pride. You breathe in, you exhale, and you walk. The day thickens around you, not in temperature necessarily, but in aroma. By late morning, the streets of Kyoto become a living cloud of clashing smells. A warm wind stirs the layers. Grilled eel from a food cart. The faint sour of horse dung drying near the stables. Wet laundry carrying the ghost of pine ash. And beneath it all, a drifting whisper of incense from a nearby shrine. You breathe it all in, calmly cataloging. Your route today loops through the Nishijin district, famous for its weavers, and infamous for its overzealous use of musk. You remember a case just last month where a loom master had attempted to impress a visiting cousin from Kamakura by burning 5 different incense blends simultaneously. The result? A localized scent fog that gave 3 neighbors headaches, and a minor clerk an existential crisis. You had to write him up. Twice. You stop at a humble doorway where the inspection roster says you're due. It's a small home, the kind where the outer gate creaks in apology rather than defense. Inside, an old woman is boiling persimmons in a cast-iron pot, their thick, earthy sweetness bubbling through the doorway. She greets you like an old friend, even though you've never met. Most people have seen at least one kosatsu in their lifetime, but very few get visits. That's by design. Your presence is meant to nudge, not menace. You step inside, fan in hand, and let your senses guide you. It's a delicate dance, part detective, part houseguest. The smell is warm and natural. Dried yuzu peel hangs from a beam, lending a light citrus note to the room. Your fan flutters once in confirmation. You nod to the old woman, who beams and continues stirring her pot. This is one of the quiet pleasures of your job, finding homes that smell like contentment. Not every inspection is a problem. Some are just gentle affirmations that the world is still stitched together by rice, wood, soap, and steam. Then again, not all neighborhoods are so peaceful. As you approach the edge of the district, the air changes. A subtle shift, like something trying to hide behind burnt onions. You pause. This is where instinct takes over. You stop walking, close your eyes, and fan the air toward your nose. There's something wrong. It's faint, but undeniably off. Sharp, metallic, with a touch of rot. Not enough to panic, just enough to investigate. Following your nose, you make your way to a nondescript storage house with closed shutters and an overly clean doorstep. That's always a red flag. Real places smell like life. This one smells like someone tried too hard to erase it. You knock gently with your fan. No answer. You circle the perimeter, noting the lack of refuse or laundry, another odd sign. Then you find it. A tiny crack in the foundation, just enough to waft out the unmistakable scent of old meat. Not fresh, not rancid, just that in-between stage that tells you someone has stored something here that should not be stored. You leave a paper slip on the door, a mayhonid formal notice of olfactory inconsistency. It's not an accusation, but it ensures a magistrate will follow up. You write, "Stored substance violates ambient harmony, possible degradation. Recommend supervised entry within 3 days." You affix your signature with a small wax stamp bearing the nose symbol seal. There, done. Historians still argue whether inspectors like you ever actually opened suspicious buildings or if your authority stopped at the nose. Some suggest you acted more like a warning system, a nose-shaped lighthouse alerting the city's true enforcers. Others claim senior scent officers were empowered to break seals, enter buildings, even confiscate offending materials. Personally, you've never kicked down a door. You prefer diplomacy and subtle shaming. You continue your route, slightly more alert now. These off-smells tend to cluster, and soon enough, you're proven right. Near the canal, you find a vendor selling what he claims are dried river fish. But your nose twitches at once. That's not river fish. That's freshwater eel mixed with a little too much old brine, possibly to mask that it sat out overnight. You fan gently, twice, to confirm. Then you raise an eyebrow. The vendor shifts uncomfortably. He tries to argue. "It's the canal smell," he says. "Always like this in summer." You simply hold up your scroll and start to write. He caves immediately, offering you a free sample, which you decline with professional detachment. He'll be fined, a small amount, enough to make him reconsider masking spoilage with clever placement near the water. It's almost comedic sometimes, how hard people try to trick your nose. They don't realize how long you've trained, how deep the knowledge goes. You know the smell of vinegar covering rotten daikon? You can tell if oil has been reused more than 5 times. You've memorized the subtle decay of improperly cured squid. And, of course, there are the truly absurd violations, like the time a group of students tried to create a new incense by mixing crushed radish, roasted barley, and powdered cherry blossom. The smell? Haunting, like wet socks in springtime. They called it essence of the field. You called it essence of why you're all fined. Still, not everything you smell is a problem. On your way back toward the central road, you pass a weaver's hut. Outside, a young boy is pressing rice straw into patterns, forming drying mats that give off a sweet, toasty scent in the sun. You pause to watch. He looks up, nervous. You smile, nod. It's perfect. You make a note. Apprentice weaving, clean scent, sweet trace, commendable. Small joys, gentle smells. The city feels in balance again, for now. The scent of lunch begins to settle across the city like a cozy quilt. Smoke from hearths and cook fires wafts upward in soft coils, mixing with steam, sizzling oil, and that unmistakable crackle of roasted barley tea. This time of day, you allow yourself a small indulgence, walking a little slower, breathing a little deeper, letting the city's midday breath pass through you. You make your way toward a more affluent neighborhood where the streets are swept clean twice a day, and the scent of pine is deliberately brushed along thresholds to signal wealth and discipline. Here, you aren't just inspecting for violations, you're interpreting social messages made of smell. In one such home, the maid bows and lets you into the entryway without question. The tatami mats are spotless, the air delicately scented with iris root and sandalwood, and the faint smell of simmered kombu whispers from the kitchen. You don't even need to inspect. These homes know you're coming. They prepare for you like an honored guest or a polite ghost. You nod to the maid, who seems relieved. But not far from there, you come upon a strange scene. A merchant's house, once pristine, now oddly vacant of scent. You pause. There's no pine, no food, no incense, no mustiness, just absence. That's never good. You knock. A servant opens the door, and at once your nostrils catch a whiff of something trying very hard not to exist. Overcleaning, soap, vinegar, burnt orange peel. Someone is scrubbing away a memory. You ask politely if you may walk through. The servant hesitates, then nods. Inside, every surface gleams, but the smell gives them away. The floorboards still hold the echo of mildew. The hallway smells faintly of wet fabric, hastily dried. And in the corner of the rear garden, a buried bundle of what smells unmistakably like spoiled rice cakes and damp parchment. You don't dig it up, of course, but you note it. Historians still debate how much power scent inspectors wielded in such homes. Were they allowed to accuse outright? Or were they expected to nudge, record, and let other officials handle formal charges? Records differ. Some scrolls describe nose-based arrests. Others treat you more like a librarian of odors, documenting, not disrupting. You write a courteous note and leave it near the gate. Scent layering inconsistent. Recommend deep airing. Check for buried textiles. It sounds vague, but the merchant will understand. And more importantly, so will the neighborhood. Nothing travels faster than the knowledge that your house has been marked for scent irregularities. Stepping back out, you find yourself alongside a canal. A boat glides past, loaded with barrels of fermented soy. The smell is thick and heady, pungent, but honest. You smile. It's comforting, in a way. No deceit, just hard-working funk. You pause for lunch at a small stall near the bridge. Not an official break, you're still working, but the cook knows you and offers you a bowl of rice with pickled plum. It smells perfect, sharp, salty, clean. You fan once in appreciation before eating. As you sit, a group of children runs by, laughing and chasing one another with little bundles of burning incense bark, playing Smell the Oni, a common game. The idea is to trap the invisible demon by chasing its scent. You played it yourself, long ago. One child stops to show you their incense bundle. It's crude, but fragrant, juniper and dried apple peel. You compliment them. They beam. This is the other side of your work, cultural continuity. Even in play, smell is serious business here. It's how memory passes, how reputation lingers, how shame festers or is healed. Not far from you, a monk tends to a row of lotus plants near the water. Their fragrance is faint, barely more than the scent of mud and morning dew, but it adds a layer to the day's composition. You nod to him. He bows back without words. You both understand that this scent, the honest, unperfumed scent of water and patience, is a kind of offering, too. You jot a quick note on your wax tablet. Canal bridge, good balance of street food, plant aroma, ambient flow. Recommend no change. Sometimes, no change is worth preserving. As you rise, your fan tucks back into your sash with a practiced motion. The breeze has shifted. New smells await. You head now toward the markets, a place where scents go to do battle. The first thing that hits you is the patron fish stall. Not the freshest batch today, but not spoiled either. You recognize yesterday's mackerel trying to pass as new. You note it. The vendor sees your fan twitch and quickly lowers his prices. The system works. A little further in, you encounter a peculiar stall, selling what it claims are scent coins. Small clay discs soaked in perfume oil, meant to be carried in sleeves or tucked in travel bags. The scent? Overpowering. Synthetic, even. You fan vigorously. This is new. You ask the vendor what's in them. He shrugs. Imported, he says, from the south. Historians have yet to agree on when foreign perfume oils entered Kyoto's markets in earnest. Some say the Song dynasty traded them quietly. Others believe Portuguese merchants introduced them centuries later. You simply note, strong oil scent, unknown origin. Market stall 12. Potential foreign blend. Your nose is full by now. This happens sometimes. Scent fatigue. You reach for your mint cloth and take a slow inhale. It resets your mind. Your stomach, however, is starting to regret that second pickled plum. But before the day ends, there's one more stop. You detour toward a quiet alley where the city's perfume artisans work. These aren't street vendors. They're trained creators of ceremonial scents, used in temples, weddings, and the private games of the court. You've always loved this part of your route, the smell of carefully aged agar wood, powdered shell, and forest moss. Each blend tells a story. Each whiff is a sentence. You greet the artisan gently. He offers you a new blend. He calls it Evening Garden. You fan. It's soft, understated, but something about it feels familiar. You smile. Mimics early plum bloom, you say. He nods, delighted. You've passed his test. Not everything needs regulation. Some things you're allowed to simply admire. By mid-afternoon, the sunlight has turned syrupy and gold, sliding lazily across rooftops and peeking through paper shutters. You've wandered back toward a residential district where the streets are narrow, the roofs hang low, and the scentscape shifts again. This time to the domestic. Here, the smells are not trying to impress. They're just living. You pass doorways humming with everyday odors. Cooked millet, drying laundry, the faintest trail of baby powder. One home exhales a warm waft of tatami mixed with freshly grated radish. Simple, grounded, honest. You note nothing. These are smells doing exactly what they're meant to do. But not 3 houses down, something strikes you as off. The scent doesn't yell. It clings. Damp, woody, with an undercurrent of decay. You pause. It's not sewage, not garbage. It's something older, moldering. You gently tap on the wooden frame. A man opens the door, middle-aged, polite, tired. He invites you in with a slight bow, and immediately you catch it more clearly. The back room smells of wet straw and shut-in air. You fan twice, slow and subtle. He sighs. "We had a flood," he admits. "2 weeks ago. Now it makes sense. The house has dried, but the smell lingers." He shows you the storehouse, where the walls still weep ever so slightly. Rice sacks ruined. A futon mold-streaked and sun-dried into surrender. You don't scold. It's not his fault. You offer suggestions: sliced yuzu peels placed near the window, smoked bamboo leaves for the storehouse, and, if he can afford it, a visit to the temple incense master. Certain blends can cut the air, as they say. Historians still argue whether smell inspectors in such cases acted more as health officials or as custodians of social dignity. Some records say you had the power to levy small fines. Others suggest your presence alone, fan-flicked once, twice, was usually enough to spark cleanup. The line between enforcer and advisor? Blurry at best. Back on the street, a woman greets you with a bowl of sweetened rice water. A kindness, though you note it carries a light scent of overcooked starch. You sip politely anyway. You decide to revisit a particular courtyard garden, one you've been monitoring. It belongs to a retired bureaucrat with a known passion for incense and a slightly less known disregard for proportion. He tends to overdo it. Today's blend? Well, you enter and are immediately enveloped in what can only be described as a scent ambush: sandalwood, patchouli, cloves, and, inexplicably, persimmon oil. It's like being slapped in the nose by a poem written by a perfumed warlord. You comment gently, "Your layering is vigorous today." He beams. "Do you think the cherry note comes through?" You don't, but you lie and say it's subtle. This, too, is your job. Not only to patrol for rot and reek, but to monitor excess. The smell of a home speaks of its inhabitant. Too sparse, and you risk suspicion. Too rich, and you risk ridicule. Balance is the unspoken law. In the back garden, you spot a censer hanging low from a pine branch. Illegal placement. Censers must be high enough not to singe leaves or create false fire alarms. You write a quiet warning, just a note tucked into his sleeve on your way out. Censer position risks pine burn. Adjust by 3 spans. Now, you move toward the riverfront, where a string of bathhouses line the path like warm-bellied frogs. The smell is steamy, mineral-rich, tinged with yuzu rind and medicinal herbs. The bathhouses are self-regulating mostly. No one wants to be known as the smelly bathhouse. Still, you inspect. One has recently added hinoki chips to their hot water. A smart choice, clean and woody. Another has gone experimental, adding fermented plum skins. You're not so sure about that one. Your fan flutters once, half approval, half warning. The owners notice. They'll adjust. That's the rhythm here. You smell, they guess your verdict, and the whole system floats on subtle signals. On your way out, you pass a curious scene. A group of older women grinding dried orange peels beside a communal stove. One of them waves you over. "We're making sachets," she says, "for the traveling priests." You inhale the mixture, bright citrus, crushed bark, lavender, travel-friendly, cleansing, comforting. You nod approvingly. Then one of the women adds a pinch of roasted barley husk, and the whole blend tips unexpectedly into something earthy and warm. It's perfect. You fan twice in delight. Quirky side note, some smell inspectors, not necessarily you, were rumored to carry small samples of ideal scent balances in wax cloths, like portable standards. Historians haven't found physical proof of these scent swatches, but some journals describe them in dreamy detail. Your shift is nearing its end, and you make a final stop. A community incense platform used for seasonal competitions. Today, it's empty, but the wind carries lingering notes from last night's gathering: plum blossom, cedar, and something faintly medicinal. You recognize it: mugwort. A curious choice for a game. Perhaps someone was hoping for purification rather than applause. You jot it down anyway. Every lingering scent tells a story. As twilight starts to stretch across the city, you begin your walk back toward headquarters. You've covered homes, stalls, temples, and bathhouses. You've fanned gently, inhaled deeply, and judged quietly. Tomorrow will bring new winds. But for now, the city exhales. You're back on the move. Boots tapping gently over worn flagstones as you head toward the older quarter of the city. The merchant district, where family shops lean shoulder to shoulder, and every other building seems to sell something that could either bless your fortune or mildly poison you. Sometimes both. The streets here are thick with life, but not in a way you'd describe as chaotic. It's a sort of humming, organized disorder. Vendors call softly to passers-by. Apprentices scrub entrance stones. Shopkeepers set out bundles of dried seaweed, lanterns with temple stamps, and, curiously, ceramic jars filled with something claiming to be ghost-purging vinegar. The smells hit you in waves: a puff of roasted chestnut smoke, a slap of pickled daikon, the powdery sigh of crushed chrysanthemum petals, and then, wait, there it is, a smell like boiling leather and week-old radish. You slow. Your fan flicks once, unconsciously. You turn down a side alley, eyes scanning. A tannery? Of course. Now, tanneries are allowed, everyone needs sandals, but they come with strict olfactory zoning laws. They're supposed to be positioned downwind of major thoroughfares near the river. This one, clearly, did not read the memo. Or rather, they read it, bowed politely, and then ignored it. You step inside. The smell hits full force: ammonia, fermented plant dye, a sharp sting of urushiol oil. A young man, not even 20, looks up from soaking hides. "We're within limits," he says quickly. You smile gently. Your limits appear to be floating down the alleyway. You ask to see their filtration mats, the ones meant to soak up runoff scent. He hesitates, then reveals a barely damp stack of reed mats, clearly reused too many times. You suggest a quiet replacement plan. New mats from the South District. A touch of cedar oil. Maybe even a consultation with the herbalist down the street. Some of his powders can neutralize scent at the vapor level. Of course, you don't say neutralize scent. You say encourage atmospheric harmony. It goes over better. As you leave, you're struck by a detail. Someone had planted a small pot of mint outside the tannery, likely in desperation. It helps, just barely. A noble attempt. You walk back toward the main drag and pass a tofu shop just as they're draining the curds. It smells fresh, yeasty, and faintly like wet paper. Not unpleasant. One of the girls inside catches your eye and lifts a basket of tofu wrapped in magnolia leaves, an old method to preserve freshness and mask faint spoilage. You ask gently, "Did this batch sit out last night?" She nods, sheepishly. You fan twice. Not in punishment, more like encouragement. The leaves did their job, but barely. They'll need to be more careful once the summer heat settles in. Some scholars still debate whether smell inspectors had fixed jurisdictional areas or rotated neighborhoods. The journals are inconsistent. You, personally, cover a wide range, either because of seniority or because you're too polite to refuse a wider route. Either way, the benefit is that you begin to notice patterns, like the Fortune Prayer incense shop near the corner of Yellow Lantern Street. That place, always just a little too spicy. You step inside. The smell is thick and theatrical. Powdered clove, overaged sandalwood, and something odd. Wormwood, maybe? The shopkeeper, an older woman with ink-stained fingers, looks up from her mixing bowls. "Trying a new blend?" you ask. She grins. "To ward off jealous lovers." You raise a brow. "I had a customer. Said her neighbor's envy was fouling her kimono rack." You don't press. People will believe what they need to believe. You do ask to see her storage boxes. She opens one lined with parchment and rice straw, filled with dried ingredients. One corner smells wrong. Musty, mildewed. "There," you say gently. "That one's turned." She sniffs it. Winces. "Mouse, probably." You nod. "Might be time to swap it for mugwort." She agrees. Another near miss avoided. That's the thing with scent. It's invisible until it's unbearable. And by then, it's already written its judgment. Outside, twilight deepens. A fog rolls in, not dense, but enough to trap the day's last scents near the ground. You kneel briefly near a water trough and splash your wrists. It clears the nose. And the mind. Near the edge of the district, you stop at a noodle vendor who always overuses scallion oil. Tonight is no different. The smell is almost metallic, biting at the back of the throat. Still, the vendor grins widely. "Want a bowl?" You smile back. "Only if you promise to go lighter on the oil." He laughs. "That obvious, huh? You fan once? You're feeding night monks. They'll float off the floor." He promises to adjust. You believe him? Probably. Quirky historical note. In some parts of the city, restaurants were judged not only by flavor, but by how their steam smelled from 10 paces away. A kind of olfactory prelude. If it passed that invisible test, people came. If not, well, sometimes they still came, but only because the tea was cheap. You make one last stop before turning toward the quieter lanes, a tea house with a reputation for late-night incense readings. They burn rare woods and interpret the curl and sway of smoke to predict fortunes. You're not here for divination, but the scent is a balm. Agar wood, light cinnamon, dried pear skin. You inhale, just once, and exhale, and then, quietly, you disappear back into the misty lanes, trailing a final flick of your fan. The night has finally folded its arms across the sky, blanketing the city in indigo stillness. You step into the quieter quarter, where temples perch like old cats, quiet but watchful, and the lanterns flicker in polite agreement with the breeze. Here, the air smells less like people and more like memory. You head for the incense district. This is where smell isn't just monitored, it's curated, debated, revered. The artisans here treat scent like philosophy. A single stick of perfectly aged aloes wood might cost more than a new roof. You step into one such studio, welcomed not with words but with a silent nod and the barely there drift of plum blossom smoke. You sit cross-legged, accepting a tiny ceramic dish of warm barley tea. The master gestures toward his wares, 5 thin trails of smoke, each whispering a different story. You don't say which one is too strong, but you fan once toward the blend with licorice root. He nods solemnly. Adjustment acknowledged. Here, your role shifts subtly. You're not an inspector so much as an interpreter, a moderator in a centuries-old conversation between scent and soul. You discuss notes, earthy versus floral, uplifting versus grounding. There's even talk of a lost recipe from the Heian period: camphor, oak moss, and powdered deer antler. Historians still argue whether such a blend ever truly existed, or if it's just a romantic fabrication, dreamed up by lonely poets with too much incense and not enough friends. You linger here longer than usual. The calm is disarming, and you find yourself relaxing your shoulders, even chuckling when the apprentice accidentally sneezes into a cloud of cypress smoke. But duty never dozes for long. As you leave the incense studio, a temple attendant hurries up to you, panting slightly. He bows deeply. "There is an issue," he says. "Naturally. There's always an issue." You follow him down a back path lined with mossy stone lanterns. It leads to a small storage building behind the main shrine, where donations are stored before redistribution. The smell hits before the door opens: sweet rot, overripe fruit, damp wood, a sickly note of spoiled rice wine. He opens the door. Inside, offerings, too many, too long unattended. Mold blossoms in corners. A bag of persimmons has liquefied into a sad, sticky pulp. You don't speak. You just walk the perimeter, sniffing carefully, cataloging. You note the airflow, or lack thereof, the placement of items, the types of rot at play. Then, gently, you point to 3 sacks that must be removed immediately. You also suggest repurposing incense ashes as an odor-neutralizing base. One monk nearby blinks in surprise. "You can do that?" You nod. "If it's from sandalwood or frankincense, pine ash just makes it worse." They take notes. They bow. They start hauling. The work of a smell inspector isn't always glamorous. In fact, it's very rarely glamorous. But there's a quiet satisfaction in helping a temple smell like reverence again, instead of fermented pickles. As you stroll back through the temple gate, a cat winds around your ankles. It smells faintly of fish, and very faintly of old paper. Possibly it lives in the archive room. Now you head toward a less sacred place, the theater district. Here, the night comes alive again. Drums thump in the distance. Laughter rises like bubbles from private booths, and perfumes mingle with sweat and spilled sake. Theaters in this era are notoriously scent-heavy zones. Actors reek of grease paint, resin, and anxiety. Patrons of plum oil and overripe musk. And in the backstage corridors, frankly, it smells like ambition. You're not here to arrest the atmosphere, only to check the boundaries. The smell must not escape the curtain. If it does, the illusion breaks. The public cannot smell the effort. You slip into the back of one performance hall. The air is thick with stage smoke, layered over with the sticky scent of orange blossom oil, likely applied too liberally to a leading actor. You peek backstage. A junior actor is scrubbing his robes with rice bran water, trying to neutralize a spilled perfume. It's a mess. You make a note to visit the costumer tomorrow. Their choice of storage sachets may be to blame. But then, in a moment of unexpected peace, you step into a changing room where someone has done it exactly right. A censer burns low. A dish of dampened tea leaves absorbs excess scent. The air feels balanced. Lived in, theatrical, but not offensive. You smile. Fan once, gently. The highest praise. Curiously, some Edo period records suggest smell inspectors occasionally partnered with theaters to advise on how certain scents might enhance specific roles. A whiff of cedar for a stoic character, plum vinegar for a tragic widow. It's unclear if this was common practice or just artistic exaggeration, But the idea lingers like smoke in the rafters. As you step outside again, the streets are softer now. The noise has dimmed. You wander down a side path toward your final call of the evening. A modest lantern maker's shop. The old man inside works by moonlight and fish oil lamp, carving tiny dragon motifs into pressed washi paper. You sniff. The air is cool, crisp, tinged with lamp smoke and faint myrrh. One corner smells slightly off, though. It's the paste he uses to mount the lantern ribs. Too much water, not enough clove oil. You mention it gently. He nods. I ran out this morning. You hand him a small vial from your sash. A courtesy. He bows deeply. On your way out, he calls after you. You're the only one who smells everything. You know. You chuckle. That's the job. You walk on, through lanes that grow emptier with each step. The city is going quiet now, but your nose is still working. The hour grows long, and the streets thin to shadows. You move like a scent yourself now, soft, invisible, inevitable, along narrow lanes flanked by closed shutters and the occasional lantern left burning for good luck. Somewhere behind you, a dog coughs in its sleep. Somewhere ahead, someone is boiling seaweed broth far too late. You're heading toward one of the lesser-known corners of the city, a neighborhood mostly made up of shared houses, traveling vendors, and aging bathhouses. It's the kind of place people don't talk much about, unless it smells wrong. Then, suddenly, everyone notices. You arrive at the bathhouse on Turtle Shell Lane. The scent is a mix of things: mineral water, scorched yuzu peel, and something off. Not offensive, but confusing, like someone tried to mask one scent with another, and only halfway succeeded. The owner greets you with a tired smile. We added something new to the water, he admits. A monk gave us a bundle of lotus leaves and said it would bring clarity of mind. You raise a brow. You boiled it? He nods proudly. You breathe in again? Yes. There it is. Burnt lotus. Smells less like spiritual awakening and more like a damp bookshelf left too close to a fire. You suggest he switch to dried persimmon skins instead. Still symbolic, still fragrant, and far less likely to make patrons think of moldy scrolls. He promises to consider it. He means well, and the place does, in fact, smell mostly clean. You fan once in acknowledgement and keep moving. Down the street, you pass a communal kitchen, where families rent stovetop space and share rice. The scent here is honest: scorched soy sauce, steamed barley, and fried tofu that someone definitely forgot on the pan. You pause as an old woman wafts at her pot with her sleeve, muttering something about sour miso spirits. You offer no correction. Historians still argue whether neighborhood communal kitchens were regularly patrolled by smell inspectors or left to self-regulate unless there was a formal complaint. The documents are vague. What is certain is that you always walk this way, even if you're not officially required to. The smells here are raw, but they're also real, and sometimes that matters just as much. You pause to admire a line of laundry hung high across two wooden balconies: shirts, robes, aprons, and, curiously, a string of dried fish. Someone's idea of multitasking. The wind shifts, and a new scent wafts in. Sweet, smoky, oddly pleasant. You follow your nose. Around the corner, a man is boiling something in a large clay pot. You watch silently until he notices you and waves cheerily. Chestnut bark and plum branches, he explains, makes the paper stronger. He's a paper maker, clearly. The bark smells sharp and clean, the plum wood richer and deeper. But something underneath sours the mix, like rainwater left too long in a sealed jar. You step closer. Did you reuse the soaking barrel? He nods. From last season. You suggest he toss a handful of dried mugwort into the barrel before next use. It helps prevent the souring. He scribbles the advice onto the back of his hand with charcoal. A child nearby sneezes dramatically. You look over. His face is half covered in ink. He grins. The neighborhood is full of these tiny moments, where scent becomes part of the social language. A compliment, a warning, a memory passed down on the wind. You stop briefly to rest on the edge of a well. The air here is cool and still, the well scent of wet stone and old rainwater rising faintly upward. It calms you. Just then, a commotion stirs at the corner. A man is waving a fan frantically, pointing at a nearby alley. You approach, a trash pile, unattended. Likely a forgotten responsibility passed between tenants too polite or too disinterested to argue. You don't lecture. You simply kneel, examine the pile, and fan once. Then again, pointedly. The message is clear. The next morning, it'll be gone. As you pass a row of narrow houses, you notice a small garden wedged into a windowsill. Chamomile, lemon balm, and a single stalk of ginger growing in a cracked teacup. You stop to sniff the air. It's humble, but the scent is lovely, sweet, medicinal, grounding. Sometimes the best smells aren't the ones you regulate, but the ones you simply get to enjoy. A cat yawns from atop a laundry pole. Somewhere a rice drum beats softly, marking the time. You've reached the edge of the neighborhood now, where houses grow sparser and lanterns flicker out for the night. Just as you're about to turn back, something strange catches your nose. Smoke. Not wood smoke. Something chalky, unfamiliar. You follow it to a low building with no signage. The door's cracked open, and inside you find two men huddled over a fire pit, tossing dried herbs onto it like gamblers throwing dice. They're experimenting. "Cinnamon and oyster shell," one says proudly. You raise an eyebrow. "Together?" They nod. To calm anxiety. You breathe in. The scent is sharp, salty, and vaguely like a winter pastry that lost a fight with the sea. You cough once, just politely, and offer a better ratio. Less shell, more bark. Maybe a pinch of crushed cardamom. They scribble notes like students at the foot of a great master, though you suspect they'll ignore half of it by morning. As you leave, one of them calls after you, "Smell is memory, you know." You nod. You know. And as you walk back through the silent streets, your steps light and nose still alert. The night folds you into its tapestry once again. Quiet. Detailed. A story told one breath at a time. It's deep night now, that velvety stretch between the clinking of last sack cups and the first rooster coughs from the countryside. The city has hushed itself into a low murmur, but you keep walking. Your job, unlike most others, follows no clock. You're heading toward a place that few include on their maps, the Tannery District. If incense is the poetry of Edo's scentscape, then tanneries are the footnotes, unpleasant, necessary, often skipped. The smell hits long before the buildings appear. Acrid, oily, a complex layering of lime, smoke, animal hide, and soaked bark. It's not foul so much as overwhelming, like an orchestra warming up where every instrument plays a different tune. You pass through the front gate, where a young boy nods without lifting his eyes from the hide he's scraping. There's no ceremony here, just work. Inside, barrels bubble with tannin-rich mixtures, oak galls, sumac leaves, and ash. Wet hides hang from beams like abandoned cloaks. You approach one barrel and lean in cautiously. The smell is wrong, not spoiled, just incomplete. You dip a finger in and sniff. Someone's forgotten the second steep. You call over the foreman, an older man with permanently wrinkled hands and a surprisingly cheerful face. He sniffs, squints, then laughs. "Too much oak. Not enough tea bark." You nod. Crisis averted. No lecture needed. He gets it. Historians still debate how closely smell inspectors worked with the so-called untouchable classes. Some records suggest official visits were infrequent, more to satisfy protocol than actual sanitation. But others, like the ledger you carry tucked in your sash, show regular visits, notes in tidy handwriting about barrel 3, second soak, insufficient bark filtration. If nothing else, your nose doesn't discriminate, and tonight it tells you something else. A fire pit nearby is burning the wrong fuel. You step closer. Sure enough, someone's tossing damp pine wood into a flame meant for drying hides. The result? A heavy, sappy smoke that clings to the leather and ruins the finish. You call it out. A young worker flushes with embarrassment. "We ran out of oak," he mutters. You sigh and reach into your pouch. One small stick of seasoned hardwood, more symbolic than useful, but it gets the message across. The foreman grins as you leave. "Come back next week," he says. "We'll have cedar chips for you to sniff." You walk on. Your path takes you next to a tiny footbridge that spans one of Edo's narrow canals. The water below smells brackish, but not offensive. A good sign. But tonight, something new floats on the air. The distinct, fishy funk of dried sardines. You follow it to a small warehouse where merchants are preparing morning shipments. Inside, burlap sacks of niboshi, dried baby sardines, are stacked like sleeping soldiers. You note the scent, strong but not rank. Just enough salt and sun to make it honest. Then you spot the problem. One sack has split open, its contents damp from a leaky roof. The fish inside have gone soft. Not yet rotten, but give it till sunrise. You point. The merchant groans. "That's a loss." "Better now than tomorrow," you reply. You sniff. The balance is nearly perfect. Barely a whiff of sourness, just a gentle hint of sweet decay that tells you the starch is fresh, not festering. She looks pleased by your approval. Craftspeople here take pride in impressing the nose before the eye. As you continue walking, the neighborhood begins to change. The air grows cooler, thinner, and filled with something else. The scent of sleep. It's real, you know. The combination of old wood, cooled tea, faded smoke, and bodies settling under layers of cotton. A kind of communal exhale. You follow it toward a row of small homes, each fronted by a narrow garden or patch of herbs. This district isn't on your formal route, but you often end up here anyway. Not because it smells bad, quite the opposite. It's your palate cleanser. You stop at one house in particular. The owner, an elderly man who once served as a low-ranking court scribe, grows yuzu and chrysanthemum. By day, he boils them into infusions he sells at the market. By night, the air around his fence smells like citrus rind, honey, and warm paper. You linger. Just for a moment. Just for the pleasure of it. Then, like a chord struck too loudly, you smell something out of place. Ash. Not the cozy kind from stoves, or the sharp kind from incense. This is old ash. Cold. Clinging. A scent with weight. You follow it past a cluster of sheds and find its source. Someone has dumped burnt cloth into a compost pile. It wasn't fully extinguished, and now the odor has steeped into the soil like overbrewed tea. You prod the pile with a stick. A trickle of heat wafts up. Nothing dangerous. Yet. But it's not right. A sleepy voice behind you murmurs, "The neighbor's boy burned his kimono after a bad spill. Said he didn't want the stain to show." You nod. You get it. Shame makes people do strange things. Still, next time he'll need to soak it first. Or better yet, not burn it at all. You cover the pile with damp earth and a sprinkle of rice husks to absorb the scent. Then you leave, scribbling a final note in the ledger. You're nearly done for the night, but there's one last detour. The Temple District. Temples, contrary to what most think, don't always smell like incense and enlightenment. Sometimes they smell like unwashed floors, overripe offerings, and too many sandals. But tonight, the temples are quiet. You step into one courtyard where an acolyte is refilling the incense braziers. He nods respectfully, gestures to a bowl of mako powder, and invites you to test it. You oblige, pinch a little, and breathe in deeply. It's acceptable, not subtle, but no glaring errors. Still, you suggest he dry the powder longer next time, too much moisture, and the scent becomes muddy. He thanks you, then surprises you by offering a small paper-wrapped bundle. For your rest, he says. Inside, you find a fragment of sandalwood and a sprig of dried lotus. You smile. You step back into the street. The stars are fewer now. The sky has lightened a shade or two, shifting from ink to charcoal. Your nose twitches. Somewhere, someone has started cooking rice. That scent, humble, steady, universal, is your signal. Morning is near. The scent of rice cooking is the city's softest alarm clock. It drifts up from open hearths and narrow windowsills, winding around tiled rooftops like a ribbon. No bells, no roosters, just steam, starch, and that unmistakable comfort. You inhale it fully and let it lead you toward the merchant quarter. Here, your role becomes a little different. Less policing, more predicting. Less about what smells wrong, more about what's about to. These shops are waking up. Baskets are being lowered from upstairs kitchens. Someone's stirring miso into broth. You smell bean paste, half fermented, and sesame oil warming in a shallow iron pan. A dog barks. A wooden sign creaks. The city breathes in again. Your first stop is a fishmonger who never quite beats the sunrise. He's setting up crates of freshly delivered catch, still glistening, still stiff. He's proud of his goods, but you know better than to trust appearances. You step closer. The smell is, well, it's complicated. Fish, obviously, but not rotting. Not yet. More like too warm. You reach into the crate and lift a mackerel. Its eyes are clear, which is good, but its belly smells faintly of the straw mat it was transported on. Too dry, you mutter. The fishmonger grimaces. No ice this morning. You suggest a trick. Wrap the bottom layer in salted seaweed to keep the scent from turning before noon. He looks skeptical, but he'll do it. Not because he trusts you, because he knows your report goes to his guildmaster. There's no actual punishment for failing a smell inspection in this quarter, but reputations are slippery things, and word spreads faster than fish turns. Historians still debate whether smell inspectors held true regulatory power over tradespeople or were more like respected advisors. In practice, you're both. You don't carry a sword, but your nose is a blade. You duck into a noodle shop next. The broth's already simmering, a slow blend of pork bones, kelp, and dried sardines. It smells thick, rich, almost buttery. But just before you leave, your nose twitches. Something off. You step into the back and sniff the stacks of kombu. One pile smells faintly of mildew. Not bad, not dangerous, but the start of something. You inform the cook, who grumbles. It's been a humid week. He's not wrong, but you recommend drying the storage crates with powdered citrus peel. It absorbs moisture and gives the wood a pleasant tang. He shrugs, then scribbles a note on the back of his hand. You can't save every smell, but you can teach people to notice them before they spoil the whole pot. Down the street, a candle maker is lighting his first wick of the day. The air smells like beeswax and burnt cotton. It's a good smell. Natural. Not too perfumed. You nod at him, and he offers a wave. You stop at a small alley where the papermakers live. Their vats are still cool, the pulp still sleeping. But even here, scent offers its early signs. You bend down and breathe in a shallow bowl of mulberry slurry. Too sweet. You gently tap the edge with your finger. The bubbles form too slowly. Fermentation has already begun, just slightly. If they wait more than a day to process this batch, the paper will hold a sour note. You leave a charcoal mark on the doorway, your silent warning. As you move on, the sunlight begins to find its way between buildings. Thin shafts of gold stretch across cobblestones and catch on wind chimes. The smell of dust rises as shopkeepers sweep their thresholds. You catch the scent of old lacquer and new ink. There's a call from a balcony above. "Inspector." "Tea?" You glance up. It's the apothecary's wife. She's holding a cup, steam curling lazily from the rim. You nod, and she lowers it to you by string in a tiny woven basket. You sip. Hojicha. Roasted green tea. Nutty. Dry. Perfectly comforting. You take another sip and ask, "New blend?" She laughs. "Left the kettle on too long yesterday? Made the best mistake." You nod appreciatively. "Add it to your inventory." She winks. "Already did." As you continue walking, your nose catches a scent you never quite get used to. Ink. Not just any ink. Fresh Sumi ink, the kind made by grinding soot into glue. You follow it to a calligrapher's stall, where a young apprentice is grinding too hard, too fast. The result? Burnt ink. Too much friction warms the stick and ruins the delicate scent. You offer a word of advice. "Slower. Let the water pull, not the stone." He slows down. You nod and keep moving. You're nearing the bathhouses now. They're just beginning to stir. You smell the first wafts of steam as firewood catches and stones are heated. The scent of wet cedar and soaproot rises in tendrils. Someone tosses orange peels into the fire. The air turns warm, citrusy, slightly smoky. This is the scent you remember most when you're older. Not the rot, not the vinegar, not the overly proud fishmongers or the careless ink grinders. It's this moment. A little fire, a little citrus. The world heating up gently before the noise begins. You make one final note in your ledger. Bathhouse district, ideal burn, balanced steam, no soot. A rare full pass. Historians often ask whether smell inspectors left behind many records. The truth is, most ledgers like yours were considered too mundane to preserve. Smells don't fossilize well. But the routines you set, the advice, the habits, the cautions, those lingered. You close the book. The sun is up now. The world is in motion. You are, technically, off duty. But one last whiff catches your attention. The bakery. You follow the scent like a string pulled through your nose. Sweet bean buns, lightly charred edges, the faintest aroma of chestnut paste. You enter. The baker blinks at you sleepily. You just raise a thumb. He smiles. Some days, the nose gets a treat too. You don't sit often during your rounds. But now, with the bakery's warmth still curling around your senses, you find yourself easing down on a worn stone bench near the shrine path. Morning is nearly complete. The neighborhood is awake, full of motion and meals and market calls. You, however, are savoring a few breaths of relative stillness. The shrine is small but fragrant, cedar beams soaked with thyme and incense. You let the scent of sandalwood and burned rice powder curl into your nose, soft and meditative. A priest walks by with a broom that smells faintly of ash and plum blossoms. You nod, he nods. There's nothing to inspect here, only to enjoy. He nods slowly, clearly filing it away. The puppet bows with a tiny creak. You bow back. And with that, your circuit is complete. For now. You start back toward your quarters, your nose still half awake, cataloging every shift in the air. The smell of grilled squid, distant thunderclouds, and someone's ill-conceived perfume choice trails behind you. This is the life of a smell inspector in medieval Japan. Not glamorous, not loud, but always, always interesting. You're not off duty, not technically, but the hardest part of the day is behind you now. Your legs ache faintly in the calves, and there's a scent of iron in your sweat, mingled with traces of the world you've walked through. Incense, yeast, fish oil, ash. You head back toward your district's central bathhouse, a shared space not just for cleaning, but for a sort of olfactory reset. The Norrin curtain brushes your shoulder as you enter. Inside, the scent is glorious. A billowing cloud of steam, cedar planks, rice bran soap, and the faint medicinal tang of hinoki leaf bundles hanging in the corner. You undress and set your tools aside. They've earned a rest, too. That satchel's absorbed more stink than a fishmonger's apron. As you soak, you let your senses float. This is one of the few moments in the day when your nose gets to not do its job. Well, mostly. A part of you is still noting a hint of mold near the upper rafters. Someone should scrub those. But you don't say anything yet. For now, it's warm water and the soft sounds of people doing absolutely nothing. Across the room, two elderly women are chatting in low voices. And then he said the pickles were cursed. Can you believe that? Pickles can't be cursed, maybe just spoiled. There was a smell like rotten plums, almost metallic. You perk up, gently. You don't insert yourself into the conversation, but your ears are tuned. Pickled foods gone wrong can mean more than just a sour lunch. It could mean botulism, though of course no one knows that name yet. They just know some smells spell trouble. You make a mental note to pass by the pickle seller's cart later in the week. Once you're dried and dressed, you feel lighter. The smell of the city isn't sticking to you so much anymore. You smell like rice husks, faint camphor, and clean skin. A smell inspector with a fresh nose is a better inspector. It's practically policy. You head next to a small tea stall near the magistrate's quarters. You're not called here for a complaint, just a favor. The tea seller waves you over with a grin and pours 2 cups. Try this, he says, handing you a steaming cup with a whisper of roasted barley. Tell me what's missing. You sip. The flavor is warm and nutty, comforting. But yes, something is thin. You sniff the loose tea in his jar, roll a few kernels between your fingers, and say, "You're missing the split husks, the half-burnt bits. They add the smoke." "Ah," he says, thumping his palm against the counter. "Knew something was wrong." This kind of consultation isn't in your official duties, but it happens all the time. You're a smell inspector, yes, but that title stretches in all sorts of directions. Tea, tobacco, lacquer, incense, perfume, even the kinds of oil used to preserve scrolls. You're half nose, half taste, half witch. That's 3 halves, you think, and chuckle softly to yourself. As you sip, a clerk from the nearby government office hurries up, breathless. "Smell inspector, you're needed." You arch a brow. "Now?" "Yes, it's the records room. Something's off." The tea seller waves you off. "I'll save the rest for later." You follow the clerk through corridors lined with stone and cedar beams. The magistrate's compound is well maintained, but even here, things go peculiar. The records room is hot and damp. That's your first concern. The second is the unmistakable scent of mildew. Not aggressive, but definitely creeping in. Scrolls line the shelves in neatly tied bundles, and a clerk in the corner is fanning himself, looking sheepish. "It's the monsoon," he explains. "Humidity's gone up." You nod and step inside. The room smells like wet paper and old glue. If left alone, it could ruin decades of records: births, marriages, land disputes, merchant licenses. You recommend immediately moving a few trays of charcoal into the corners, placing citrus peel satchels near the lower shelves, and airing out the room daily with a cross breeze. The scent of rot isn't strong yet, but you can smell it in the bones of the place. One of the junior scribes asks if incense might help. You shake your head. It'll just cover the smell, not fix it. Like throwing perfume on a fish. They all grimace. By the time you leave, the wind's shifted again. Afternoon is drifting toward evening, and the air's cooling. People are lighting small braziers in their homes, and the scent of charcoal smoke joins the day's aroma parade. It's a comfort smell. Familiar. Steady. Safe. You wind through a quieter street now, past paper lanterns just beginning to glow. A cat jumps down from a ledge beside you and lands with a thud on your path. You pause to give it a scratch, and it sniffs your fingers with grave suspicion. "Don't worry," you murmur. "Just 1,000 smells, none of them yours." You spot something strange on the next block. A small group of people gathered around a cart. A man is wafting smoke around it with a fan, and it smells like sweetgrass, cinnamon, burned orange peel. Curious, you approach. He's selling a new kind of incense, he claims, meant to ward off evil dreams. You lean in, take a good deep breath, and let the scent filter through your senses. It's interesting, not unpleasant. But the combination is unstable. Burns too fast, the scent turns acrid halfway through. You tell him, kindly, that it might be more effective with a little sandalwood base. He looks surprised. "You can smell all that?" You smile. "It's my job." He hands you a stick for free. "For your dreams, then." You pocket it and continue down the road. Evening deepens. You can smell it in the air: warm clay, cooking rice, faint blossoms stirred by the cooler air. This is your favorite part of the day. Fewer complaints, fewer questions. Just the city settling into itself. And you too, settling, scent by scent, into the quiet rhythm of a job no one quite understands, but everyone depends on. The evening thickens, and the last rays of sunlight slip from the sky. The city shifts, the streets quieten, the marketplace clears, and even the smell of food starts to fade. As the shadows lengthen, the day's last breath of warmth mingles with the cool evening air. You've completed your rounds, but there's one last part of your duties to take care of. The streets are darker now, and lanterns begin to light up, casting soft pools of amber light. The scent of oil and charred wicks fills the air. The small market stalls, previously bustling with sales and chatter, are closing down for the night. Some merchants pack up with sighs of relief, while others linger, reluctant to leave the comfort of their post for the night. The smells of incense, mixed with the distinct charred scent of wood burning in the air, follow you as you walk towards your final stop, the temple. You've visited the temple before, but tonight, you're here for something different. A report has been circulating that the temple's incense burners have been emitting a strange smell. It's not bad per se, but it's unusual, sharp and pungent, a bit more like spoiled citrus than the usual calming sandalwood. You slip inside the temple grounds, the cool air mingling with the scent of freshly fallen leaves. A small procession of priests moves slowly through the courtyard, lighting lanterns and offering prayers to the spirits. The air is filled with the soft sounds of chanting and the distant ringing of a temple bell. You approach the incense burner. It sits in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by the soft glow of lanterns and the light mist of the evening dew. A faint smoke curls from the burner, and as you inhale, the unusual scent hits you again. It's cloying, overripe fruit. You can almost taste the sourness on your tongue. You close your eyes, concentrating. You can almost hear the smoldering incense, the faint crackle as the incense powder burns unevenly. You realize immediately, it's the blend. Too much of a particular resin has been used, one that's rare, expensive, and often reserved for special ceremonies. But in this case, it's overpowering. A heavy smell that drowns out the softer notes of sandalwood and chrysanthemum that are usually used to honor the ancestors. One of the priests, noticing you, approaches cautiously. "What's wrong, smell inspector?" he asks, his voice low and respectful. You inhale deeply again, but this time you breathe out slowly through your mouth. "The incense mix is unbalanced," you say softly. "It's burning too hot. The proportions are wrong." The priest looks troubled. "Is that dangerous?" You hesitate for a moment. Not dangerous, but it's distracting. For worshippers, it might feel overwhelming. For the spirits, who knows? The priest nods solemnly, as if considering this. Could it be changed? You take a moment, thinking. You have suggestions, of course, many of them. You need to switch the ratio. Less resin, more sandalwood and rice powder to balance the strength, and maybe a dash of crushed chrysanthemum to soften it. He bows his head. "We'll change it at once. Thank you for your wisdom." As the priest hurries away to fetch new incense, you step back, surveying the temple courtyard. The quiet hum of evening fills the space again. The incense burner still smokes faintly, but now it's just the usual smell, soft and calming. You breathe it in slowly, your mind unwinding. There's something peaceful about this place, even with its slight missteps. It reminds you that smell, like everything else, is a delicate balance. A little too much of one thing, and the whole experience shifts. Too much heat, too much resin, too little balance. But when it's right, everything falls into place, smooth and perfect. As you leave the temple grounds, you can't help but take in the smells of the night once more. The coolness of the air, the faint scent of wet stone, the lingering fragrance of incense in the breeze. It's a strange mix of the fresh and the familiar, comforting yet ever-changing. You pass a row of homes where windows are opening and warm lights flicker from inside. There's a faint whiff of roasted chestnuts and freshly baked bread from a house on the corner, and your stomach rumbles at the thought of the evening meal. It's time to return to your own quarters, where the day will end. The work, for now, is done. But before you reach your door, a faint smell tugs at you. Someone's cooking fish nearby. The smell of salt, smoke, and something savory and rich floats through the air. You stop and close your eyes. Just for a moment. It's fleeting. The scent is gone as quickly as it arrived. But it lingers in your mind, a soft reminder of your purpose. You are the keeper of smells, the preserver of balance. And though your work is often quiet, unnoticed, and sometimes misunderstood, it is essential. You are the one who walks through the world, making sure everything smells just as it should. And so, as night fully settles over the city, you allow yourself a final breath of satisfaction, feeling the weight of the day's work release from your shoulders. In this world of shifting scents, the smallest imbalance can cause ripples. But for now, it's enough. Everything is as it should be. The night drapes itself over the city like a soft blanket. The once bustling streets now quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant murmur of a shopkeeper closing his stall. You walk slowly, your pace unhurried. The lanterns along the path flicker in the gentle evening breeze, casting warm, amber pools of light on the cobblestones. The air has grown cooler, and a light mist rises from the ground, curling around your feet like a delicate fog. As you make your way home, the silence feels different now, more peaceful, as though the city has settled into a deep breath. It's a comforting thought. All those tiny, unseen adjustments you've made today, whether it was correcting an incense blend, adjusting a brewing technique, or offering advice on a troublesome pickled batch, have ensured a smoother, calmer existence for everyone around you. It's subtle, but it's there, a kind of harmony. The smell of the city is different now, too, and it's not just the cooler air. It's a deeper, softer smell, a nighttime smell, if such a thing exists. The earthy scent of wet stones mingled with the faint perfume of flowers closing their petals. The sharp, clear aroma of cedar wood as it catches the first touch of the night air. You stop for a moment and close your eyes, breathing it all in. It's a quiet, grounding moment, and you allow yourself to just be. Your home is just ahead now, and you pick up your pace slightly, anticipating the warmth waiting inside. It's funny how you've grown accustomed to the comfort of a familiar space. A room to call your own, where you can strip away the layers of the day and let everything rest. As you enter, the familiar scent of your quarters envelops you. Soft linen, dried herbs hanging from the rafters, a slight trace of smoke from the brazier you've left glowing. You set your bag down by the door, noticing the faint scent of dust where the scrolls are stored. Not unpleasant, but it reminds you. There's always something to adjust. Even in your own space, you prepare a simple meal, the smell of rice cooking filling the small kitchen. It's not fancy, but it's enough. You don't need extravagance, just nourishment, warmth, and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Sitting down to eat, you think back on the day, the unusual scents you encountered, the corrections you made, the people you helped, all the small, unseen threads that hold the city together. You realize, as you sit there, how much of it all depends on something so simple, so everyday. Smell. That invisible yet vital force that affects everything. It's not just about finding the unpleasant things, though that's part of it. It's about maintaining balance, about ensuring that things don't veer too far in one direction, because even a small imbalance can disrupt the entire flow of a day or a life. You finish your meal, feeling satisfied but not overly full. The work is done. The scents of the day are fading, leaving only memories behind. You make sure the lantern is dimmed, the brazier is low, and the door is locked. As you prepare to settle into bed, you let out a long, quiet sigh. It's peaceful here. The sounds of the city are far away now. The steady rhythm of your own breathing fills the room. And, for a moment, it's just you. The soft linens, and the warm scent of sleep creeping in like the night itself. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of the day gently lift from your shoulders. The delicate balance you maintain is invisible to most, but tonight, you know it's there. You are the keeper of smells, the one who ensures everything stays in its place. And that's enough, for tonight, at least. As sleep draws near, you're reminded of the subtle beauty in small, unnoticed things. The way a certain scent can bring a memory rushing back, or the way a familiar aroma can ground you in the present. In the world of smells, it's these small adjustments that make all the difference. And for now, you can rest, knowing everything smells exactly as it should.